like Jay-Z said something in the record Ham. He was saying, you ain't got baby money, you spending baby money. Is there an issue?
Not with me, but I don't know how he feeling, but we just doing what we do, I ain't tripping. We spending baby money. That's how we live.
That was Birdman.
What if I told you that one of the most powerful conflicts in hip-hop history didn't begin with a diss track, didn't explode on stage, and didn't trend on social media, but instead started quietly behind closed doors inside record label offices where decisions worth hundreds of millions of dollars are made? Because long before cameras caught chaos at a private industry event, long before leaked footage shocked the internet, there was already a silent war taking place between two empires, and that war had been building pressure for nearly 20 years. This is not just a story about Jay-Z and Birdman, this is the story of power, loyalty, fear, and what happens when hip-hop grows from street culture into corporate warfare. The footage that recently surfaced didn't break the internet because of violence alone. It broke the internet because of who was involved: Jay-Z, a symbol of calculated success and long-term vision; Birdman, a symbol of loyalty, control, and street-built empire. These are not men who move emotionally in public. When tension reaches this level, it means something has been left unresolved for a very long time. And to understand why this moment mattered so much, you have to go back to the roots of the conflict known inside the industry as the Empire War. The mid-2000s were a turning point for hip-hop. For decades, New York had controlled the culture. But by this time, the South was no longer asking for permission. It was taking over, and no artist represented that takeover more clearly than Lil Wayne. By 2006, Wayne was evolving fast. His mixtape run showed hunger, his lyrics were sharper. His influence was spreading beyond regions. Industry insiders could feel it. Wayne wasn't just successful, he was becoming inevitable at the same time. Something crucial was happening behind the scenes. Lil Wayne's original Cash Money contract was approaching its expiration date. In the music industry, that moment changes everything. When a superstar gets close to freedom, the balance of power shifts. Other labels start watching. Executives start calculating, and opportunities appear that were never possible before. Jay-Z saw this immediately. At the time, he wasn't just an artist with influence. He was the president of Def Jam Records, sitting at the top of one of the most powerful labels in the world. Jay-Z had already proven that he understood timing better than almost anyone in hip-hop. He didn't chase trends, he positioned himself ahead of them. And when he looked at Lil Wayne, he didn't see just a rapper. He saw the future of Southern dominance and the next global hip-hop icon. Jay-Z didn't play this quietly. Instead of sending lawyers or industry middlemen, he invited Lil Wayne directly into the Rockefeller offices. Face-to-face, no filters, no distance, to powerful minds discussing vision, legacy, and what a partnership between two major forces could produce. From Jay-Z's perspective, this was business. Contracts expire, labels recruit, talent moves. That's the game, but Birdman did not see it as a game. To Birdman, Cash Money Records was not just a company, it was family. He had built it from the ground up in 1991 alongside his brother Slim. He didn't just sign artists, he raised them. He fed them, he housed them. Lil Wayne wasn't just an employee to Birdman, he was a son figure. Someone he had invested in since childhood. So when Birdman learned that Jay-Z was having direct conversations with Wayne, without his involvement, it didn't feel like competition. It felt
like Jay-Z said something in the record Ham. He was saying, you ain't got baby money, you spending baby money. Is there an issue?
Not with me, but I don't know how he feeling, but we just doing what we do, I ain't tripping. We spending baby money. That's how we live.
Like betrayal. Birdman interpreted Jay-Z's move as poaching, as crossing an unwritten line. In his eyes, Jay-Z wasn't just recruiting talent. He was attacking the foundation of Cash Money itself, and Birdman's response showed how serious this had become. Instead of responding publicly, he responded legally. A legal letter was sent accusing Jay-Z of tortious interference. This is a serious civil claim that suggests one party intentionally damaged another party's contractual or business relationship. This wasn't a publicity stunt, this was a warning. A message sent directly to one of the most powerful men in music, inside the industry. This changed everything. Because when moguls start using lawyers instead...
I went to a session with him the other night.
Did you ask him about the Jay-Z line?
I wouldn't ask him about a Jay-Z line because he's not Jay-Z.
Is that something you would react to as an MC?
Actually, the subject that he's talking about in that line, I can't box with the guards with that. You know what I mean?
Jay-Z did
of words, pride has already been wounded. From that moment on, the relationship between Jay-Z and Birdman was permanently damaged. There was no public resolution, no peace talk, just distance, cold respect at best. Both men continued to build, but now they were doing it with quiet resentment in the background. Jay-Z continued expanding his empire beyond music. He stepped into fashion, sports management, streaming platforms, and tech investments. He wasn't just chasing money, he was chasing legacy. Birdman, meanwhile, doubled down on cash money. The label dominated radio. The hits kept coming. From the outside, it looked unstoppable. But unresolved conflict doesn't disappear, it waits. As years passed, the cracks started showing through Lil Wayne himself. His legal battles with Cash Money became public. Albums were delayed, financial disputes surfaced. Wayne openly talked about feeling stuck and unheard. Fans were confused, but insiders weren't. When power struggles happen at the top, artists usually pay the price. Wayne's fight wasn't just about money. It was about ownership, control, and respect. And while all this was happening, Jay-Z and Birdman continued moving in the same elite industry circles, same award shows, same private events, same rooms, but never real peace, different alliances, different philosophies. Jay-Z represented corporate mastery and long-term strategy. Birdman represented loyalty, control, and street-rooted leadership to kings, to worlds. One industry. By the time the recent footage surfaced from a private industry event, the tension had already existed for nearly 2 decades. Witnesses described raised voices, confusion, and security stepping in as things escalated. What was supposed to remain private suddenly became public, and the internet reacted instantly. But the truth is, this moment wasn't random, it was history catching up. As time moved forward, the hip-hop industry itself began to change, and with that change, the philosophies of power became clearer. Jay-Z and Birdman were no longer just label heads. They were symbols of 2 very different ways of building an empire. Jay-Z believed in evolution. He believed in scaling beyond music. His mindset was about ownership, diversification, and positioning himself in rooms that hip-hop had never entered before. Birdman, on the other hand, believed in control. He believed in loyalty, hierarchy, and keeping everything within the family. To him, power came from holding the foundation tightly, not letting it spread too far beyond his reach. These opposing philosophies are important because they explain why the conflict never healed. Jay-Z saw artists as partners who would eventually outgrow their contracts and move into ownership. Birdman saw artists as family members who stayed loyal for life. Neither approach was completely right or wrong, but when these worlds collided, friction was inevitable. And Lil Wayne was standing directly in the middle of it. Wayne's legal battle against Cash Money wasn't just shocking, it was symbolic. When Wayne sued for unpaid money and control over his music, fans saw it as a personal betrayal between mentor and student. But insiders saw something deeper. They saw the long-term consequences of a system built on control instead of transparency. Wayne wasn't just fighting Birdman, he was fighting for independence. And that fight echoed the same tension that began back in 2006, when Jay-Z first recognized Wayne's future and tried to position himself within it. By this time, Jay-Z had already exited his role as Def Jam president. But his influence never left the room. He had proven that artists could become billionaires, that rappers could own sports teams, streaming platforms, and global brands. His success quietly validated the idea that Birdman feared most, that artists eventually outgrow the systems that created them. And that fear made old wounds hurt even more. Behind the scenes, the industry talked. Executives whispered. Artists chose sides. Some aligned with Jay-Z's vision of expansion and ownership. Others stayed loyal to Birdman's structure and street-rooted authority. No one said it out loud, but everyone felt it. The Empire War wasn't loud, but it was real. As the years passed, the industry tried to move on. New artists rose. New sounds dominated. Social media changed how beefs played out in public. But some conflicts don't fade with time. They harden. They become part of identity. And when 2 men like Jay-Z and Birdman carry that history into the same private spaces, tension doesn't need words. It's already understood. That's why the leaked footage mattered so much. Not because of what was seen, but because of what it confirmed. Witnesses described a room where the energy suddenly shifted. Voices were raised. The atmosphere changed. Security became alert. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was 2 empires standing face to face after years of silence. What could have been a calm industry gathering instantly felt unstable. And even though details remain limited, the symbolism was loud. 2 men who helped shape modern hip-hop nearly coming to physical confrontation. That doesn't happen without history. That doesn't happen over small issues. That happens when unresolved power struggles finally reach their boiling point. The internet reacted fast, but predictably. Memes were made. Clips were replayed. Opinions flooded social media. But the internet rarely understands context. This wasn't entertainment. This was legacy colliding with legacy. This was the past knocking on the present's door. The Empire War shows us something uncomfortable about hip-hop's evolution. As the culture grew richer, the battles became quieter but more dangerous. Contracts replaced street corners. Lawyers replaced fists. But the emotions stayed the same: pride, loyalty, fear of losing control, fear of being replaced. Jay-Z represents the idea that hip-hop should grow beyond its origins, that artists should become owners, investors, and global power players. Birdman represents the belief that hip-hop should remain loyal to its roots, that family comes before expansion, that control equals protection. Neither man is a villain. Neither man is innocent. They are products of the same culture, shaped by different experiences. And Lil Wayne's journey sits at the heart of it all. A child prodigy turned global icon. A symbol of both loyalty and independence. His struggles expose the cracks in systems that once seemed unbreakable. And his story proves that when empires fight, artists often carry the scars. In the end, the Empire War isn't just about Jay-Z and Birdman. It's about hip-hop growing up and realizing that success comes with consequences. That power creates distance. That unresolved history doesn't disappear just because time passes. It waits, it watches. And when the moment is right, it resurfaces. The leaked footage wasn't the beginning of the story. It was the reminder. A reminder that behind every polished image and billion-dollar deal, there are human emotions that never fully go away: respect, ego, pride, and the fear of losing everything you built. This is why the Empire War matters. Because it shows us that the most dangerous conflicts in hip-hop aren't always public. Sometimes they live quietly for decades, waiting for one moment to reveal how deep they really go. And when they do, the entire culture feels the impact. As hip-hop entered the streaming era, power shifted again. And this shift quietly added more weight to the Empire War. The industry was no longer just about albums and radio spins. It was about ownership of data, platforms, and influence. Jay-Z was one of the first to fully understand this change. His involvement in streaming, sports management, and technology was not accidental. It was strategic. He understood that the next level of control wouldn't come from record sales, but from infrastructure, from owning the systems artists depended on. Birdman watched this evolution from a different angle. To him, the strength of Cash Money had always been independence, not needing outside approval, not relying on corporate structures. Cash Money had dominated without Silicon Valley, without Wall Street, and without tech partnerships. That success reinforced Birdman's belief.
So, like I said, it broke me, and I'm just trying to put me back together.
That control should stay centralized, tight, and personal. But as the industry changed, that model became harder to maintain, and pressure began to build from inside his own camp. This pressure didn't just affect Lil Wayne, it affected the entire Cash Money ecosystem. Younger artists began watching Jay-Z's blueprint closely. They saw an artist who turned music into leverage and leverage into ownership. Quietly, a new generation started asking questions that older systems were never designed to answer. Who owns the masters? Where does the money go? What happens when the contract ends? These questions weren't rebellious. They were inevitable. This is where the Empire War becomes bigger than two men. It becomes a symbol of transition. Old school power versus modern leverage. Loyalty versus flexibility. Control versus transparency. Jay-Z and Birdman didn't just represent themselves. They represented two eras colliding. The industry tried to keep things polite. Publicly, there was respect. No open disses. No direct attacks. But privately, the tension stayed alive. People who moved between both circles felt it immediately. Conversations changed when names were mentioned. Rooms went quiet. Alliances were carefully chosen. This is how Cold Wars operate. Not with explosions, but with silence. When Lil Wayne finally began distancing himself emotionally and professionally from Cash Money, it felt like the final crack in a once unbreakable foundation. Even when reconciliation appeared on the surface, the damage had already been done. Trust, once broken, never fully returns to its original shape. And that broken trust traced all the way back to the moment Jay-Z first saw Wayne as the future, and Birdman first felt his empire being threatened. That's why the leaked footage hit differently. It wasn't shocking because of aggression. It was shocking because it made the invisible visible. It confirmed what many insiders had whispered for years, that this war never ended. It only went quiet. People often ask why powerful men still hold onto old conflicts when they've already won. The answer is simple. Power doesn't erase memory. Success doesn't heal pride. And money doesn't replace respect. Jay-Z and Birdman both won in their own ways, but neither ever truly won that original battle for control, validation, and dominance. In hip-hop, respect is currency. Lose it, and no amount of wealth can buy it back. The Empire War shows us that when respect is questioned at the highest level, the damage echoes for decades. Through contracts, through artists, through the culture itself. As fans, we often romanticize beefs because they come with music and moments. But the real conflicts are quieter. They happen when the cameras are off, when decisions are made that shape careers, futures, and legacies. This story forces us to confront the uncomfortable truth that hip-hop, like any other powerful industry, is driven by human emotion as much as strategy. The Empire War is not about who was right or wrong. It's about how hip-hop grew faster than its systems could handle, how fathers became bosses, how artists became assets, and how empires, once built, are always afraid of collapse. In the end, that footage wasn't a scandal. It was a reminder that unresolved history always finds a way back into the present, that even kings carry old wounds, and that in hip-hop, the loudest wars aren't always fought with microphones. Sometimes they're fought in silence. Even after the footage faded from headlines, the ripple effects of the Empire War continued to move quietly through the industry. Executives, artists, and insiders didn't need statements or confirmations. They understood the language of tension. In hip-hop, what isn't said is often louder than what is, and what remained unsaid after that moment spoke volumes about how deeply rooted this conflict truly was. One of the most misunderstood parts of this war is the idea that it was fueled by jealousy or competition alone. In reality, it was driven by fear. Not fear of losing money, but fear of losing relevance, control, and narrative. Jay-Z had mastered the art of redefining himself. Every time the culture shifted, he shifted with it. From rapper to executive, from executive to billionaire, from billionaire to cultural architect. That ability didn't just inspire others. It threatened systems that were built on stability rather than evolution. Birdman's empire was built in a time when control meant survival. When trusting outsiders could get you robbed, exploited, or erased. Cash money succeeded because it kept power close and loyalty closer. But as hip-hop matured into a global business, that same structure began to feel restrictive to artists who wanted more transparency and ownership. This clash wasn't about right versus wrong. It was about timing. And timing can be ruthless. Lil Wayne's generation was the bridge between these two worlds. He grew up inside the old system but matured in the new one. That made his journey complicated. He carried loyalty in his heart and ambition in his vision. And when those two forces pulled him in opposite directions, conflict became inevitable. Wayne's struggle exposed a truth many artists were afraid to face. That gratitude and growth don't always coexist peacefully. As younger artists watched this unfold, they learned quietly. They studied contracts more carefully. They asked more questions. They demanded better terms. Jay-Z's blueprint showed them what was possible beyond music. Birdman's legacy showed them the cost of building without letting go. The Empire War became an unspoken lesson passed from one generation to the next. Behind the scenes, industry meetings changed. Language shifted. Executives became more cautious. Artists became more informed. The power dynamic slowly tilted away from blind loyalty towards strategic partnership. This didn't happen overnight, and it didn't happen because of one man. But the conflict between Jay-Z and Birdman played a major role in accelerating that change. What makes this story so powerful is that there is no clean ending, no official apology, no public sit-down, no clear winner. Just two empires that shaped hip-hop in different ways, carrying scars that never fully healed. That unfinished feeling is what makes the Empire War feel real. Life rarely offers closure, especially when pride is involved. In many ways, this war reflects hip-hop itself. A culture born from struggle, creativity, and survival, now navigating wealth, power, and legacy. The same emotions that fueled early rap battles still exist at the highest levels. They're just expressed differently. Through contracts instead of verses. Through boardrooms instead of street corners. When future historians look back at this era, they won't just see numbers and headlines. They'll see a turning point. A moment when hip-hop had to decide what it wanted to become. A moment when artists began demanding ownership, and executives had to adapt or resist. Jay-Z and Birdman stood on opposite sides of that shift, not as enemies, but as symbols. And maybe that's the real lesson of the Empire War, that conflicts don't always mean hatred. Sometimes they mean transformation. Sometimes they mean the old way fighting to survive while the new way pushes forward. And sometimes they mean that even legends are still human, still carrying emotions from moments they never fully resolved. In the end, the Empire War isn't a scandal to be consumed and forgotten. It's a case study. A warning, and a reflection of how power works when culture turns into capital. It reminds us that behind every empire is a story. And behind every story is a moment where everything could have gone differently. And those moments never truly disappear. They wait.